Welcome everybody to the LearningShared CPLD program and learning platform. My name is Alan Wood. For those of you who don't know me, I'm one of the co-founders and directors at Evidence for Learning. I'm joined today in the main by Alistair Crawford from St Martin's School and St Andrew's School, as well as Whole School Send and Hope National Academy. And we're also joined by Vijita Patel, the principal at Swiss Cottage School Development and Research Centre, Diane Rochford, who many of you know was chair of the Rochford Review, and Professor Barry Carpenter, who I think should be known to everybody by now. Our agenda today then, very briefly, we're going to start with some background on what has really led us and driven us to conceive the LearningShared programme and the platform. We'll then introduce the platform, provide a short tour, and then following that, we'll hear from some of the key people that have been involved in its development and design, namely Professor Carpenter, Diane, and Vijita. In the last part of the presentation, we'll explain how the costs work, we'll show you how you can find out more, how you can enroll, and then finally there'll be some time and an opportunity for some questions at the end. So what's the background to this? I thought I'd start with some statistics. The EFL LearningShared community now comprises more than 600 specialist settings, SEND settings. Those are specialist schools, mainstream schools, colleges, as well as alternative provisions. And then across those schools, there's they've collected more than 12 million observations, pieces of evidence. That's for 134,000 learners. And as I put up there, EFL has now been used to capture learning, to help articulate progress towards 1.87 million outcomes. There, in addition to the evidence being captured, there's 9.6 million assessments or professional judgments have been recorded by teaching staff against those outcomes. So I think we can safely say it's a very active community. I think the really exciting and extremely interesting nugget, though, in all these numbers is actually the quality of the community that this represents in terms of people, knowledge, experience, practice, as well as the voice and advocacy that's potentially there as well. And I think this presents, and we've always believed that this presents a real myriad of opportunities. And really the next slide I want to talk about is what we've done to really try and nurture this community. For us, that's been really a secondary focus since 2018, when we ran our first event. I'll always give huge thanks to Sarah Whittington, the head teacher at Tettenhall Wood, who very kindly offered to host what was the inaugural networking and development event for the EFL community in Wolverhampton back in June of 2018, where we sent an email out to around 100 school leaders that were using EFL at the time, and literally 80 of them showed up for this meeting, which was fantastic. And then really over the next couple of years, that network grew, the events grew. In June 2019, we had to hire the Ricoh Arena in Coventry to fit everybody in. And beyond that, we've never really been able to find a place big enough for everybody. So we've started to have regional meetings. Then COVID struck, obviously, and the pandemic. And with that, we found the appetite for people to come together was as strong as ever, certainly after the initial shock of the pandemic had died down. And so we started to move things online. We started to do things virtually. And again, the stats there, I think, they're really just to, I guess, show that the appetite is strong for this shared learning. So hopefully that gives you some perspective from the EFL and LearningShared community side of things. Obviously, alongside this, there's been some significant and important developments in the sector. And I'm going to hand over to Alistair, who's going to talk us through some of those.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, well, we all know, I think the pace of change in education and our landscape is always fast. I think never more so than across the last couple of years. And just to walk through some of those, and in terms of where our thoughts really came from in terms of the LearningShared offer and the platform. So of course, we've been through a global pandemic, and COVID-19 has changed our school communities in so many different ways in terms of the way we work, the way we connect with people, the way that we communicate. And if we take that from a CPLD perspective, you know, the challenges with staff absence of being able to release people, the challenges to have people to come into our school communities and see the work that we do. So the days of maybe sending someone out on a course somewhere far away are probably behind us, and we're mixing in very different ways now, and there's some brilliant opportunities there in terms of that remote and online offer. We've looked at synchronous and asynchronous ways in which we can share learning, so a real shift really in terms of the way that we will interact and sort of consume CPLD, I guess. If we think of the landscape in terms of specialist expertise, so the teaching school hub model is more mature now, and there are some great examples in some parts of the country where that hub is doing a fantastic job and inclusion is at the heart of all they do. In other parts of the country, not so developed maybe, and a concern where we've lost perhaps those specialist teaching schools, and again, how they would support their locality, their mini region. And again, I think there's still a concern that maybe we've lost some of that specialist expertise and capacity from across the system. And again, you'll all have your own experiences within your local areas of what that looks like. If we think about, and I laugh when I look at the screen and say that the new EIF, obviously it's not new, it's been with us for a while now, but obviously it's been inspected far more now as we move into the next stage of kind of COVID-19. And I think that early evidence that we see is really that SEND and inclusion is a higher priority than it ever has been before. So I think if you look at those Ofsted reports from September, you are far more likely to see comments and thoughts and reflections on what inclusion looks like within that school community, and a far higher priority on that new EIF. So I think the ways in which we lead SEND and inclusion in our school communities from an Ofsted perspective is a higher priority maybe than it ever has been before. And I think if we move into that last point on screen there, so we've had the white paper and the green paper with us over the last few weeks or so, and we'll all have digested that and begin to form our own thoughts and reflections. But again, I think seeing a white paper that has SEND and inclusion woven throughout it, the number of mentions there, you know, really, really quite significant. And just one kind of thought to take away from the green paper is that thought around connectivity and the cross-phase and the cross-sector work, and how we come together to share practice to support our young people with additional needs in all settings. And again, that really has developed our thinking with the LearningShared platform in terms of how we can access the amazing things that we'll walk through with you in a moment, but equally so, how we can share practice and intersect with other fantastic colleagues. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alistair. We're going to have a look at the platform now. I guess just setting the scene to this. About a year ago, we started speaking with colleagues across the LearningShared community about really where do we go next, taking into account the journey that we've alluded to already in the first 3 slides. But as Alice has just portrayed, you know, the changing landscape and some of the issues that schools are having to deal with. The principal question was, how best do we harness and make available the benefits of this amazing community that we've got? We wanted to, in particular, move away from the idea of ad hoc one-time events. Many of you will have been to a lot of our events in the past, and they're great, and usually 1 or 2 people can show up. But we wanted to come up with something that was maybe a little bit more sustainable, that was available throughout the whole year, that was a kind of constant resource that schools could come back to, something that really did justice to the expertise and experience that we've got. So here's the results. What we've developed is a comprehensive CPLD program. It's very much aimed at both specialist and mainstream settings and colleagues. It's been designed and led by some phenomenal practitioners in terms of their leadership and expertise and experience. As I say, we're going to hear from some of them in a moment. We've been able to gain contributions from a similarly stellar group of leaders and experts in the field, colleagues like Dr Tina Rae, Sharon Gray, Dr Janet Rose, who's a leading authority on attachment, Laura Purser. There's a fantastic section on trauma, as well as some fabulous school-based colleagues, Amanda Mordey, Roz McFeeters, Shona McCann, to name a few. I think that's the important part. We've tried to create something that very much draws on the wealth of knowledge and expertise that exists within the Learning Shared community. And so another part of it, in addition to the CPLD program, so the content, if you like, is there's absolutely going to be an opportunities to connect with colleagues across the community. We're going to be running live events as part of this. We're also in the process, and later this year, we'll be launching a learning platform extension that will effectively work like a closed community, very similar to, if you think, those of you that are familiar with LinkedIn or Facebook or Nextdoor, a private professional networking tool that will enable you to search for colleagues, to network with colleagues, to collaborate and participate in any online networking opportunities. So that's really the overview, if you like, and the plan. It's structured across 7 modules. We've got a module for curriculum, we've got a module that's looking at teaching pedagogy, we've got a module that's looking at assessment, a module that's going to be looking at leadership at all levels, a module that looks at SEND policy and legislation, reflective inquiry, and well-being, in particular mental well-being. Each module consists of a whole range of different types of resources, from lectures to presentations to case studies from leading schools. There'll be signposted further reading, as well as activities and suggested developmental questions that you can take back to your school for discussion. As I say, we're really interested in trying to develop something that's practical, something that you can use as a toolkit within your own schools. And the last point is there will be these live networking events as well. We'll talk something about those. Throughout the program, as it says there, illuminations, contributions and case studies will be provided by schools right across the community. And please say we've already got, it's burgeoning with case studies already. So thank you to everybody that's already participated and contributed. And as I say, crucially, all of these resources will be available and accessible to all of your staff, your governors within your school, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right through to the end of July 2023. So let's have a look at it. We'll switch now to the browser. So first up, here's where you'll find it. If you go to the Evidence for Learning website and you scroll down, up in the top right, you'll see a button for Learning Shared. And then underneath that, you can see there's a drop-down item there that says LearningShared CPD offer. You can actually also just type in www.learningshared.org/CPLD, and then that will take you to this page. And then if you scroll down, there's some information about the program. And then crucially, there's a big button here that you can hit, and then that will take you through to the learning platform. And again, if you can scroll down here, you can find some more information. If you scroll further down, there's an opportunity to get in touch with us if you have any questions. You can read some of the bios from some of the contributors. We've also got right at the very bottom information about pricing, which we'll come back to, as well as a form to enroll your school. And all that information is also available at the top. When a school enrolls, each member of staff in the school that you want to give access to the platform will have their own unique login that will get them into the system. So that could be staff, it could be teachers, leaders, governors. And then once they log in, the system will remember where they're up to. So it'll know what they've looked at, what they've completed. So you get this ability to really work through this at your own pace and be aware of what you've done and what you haven't. But this is inside the program. So once you're enrolled, you can see we've got the modules here. And Alistair, I'm going to hand over to you now so you can take us through this.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Just in case of walking through the platform, you can see the wealth and breadth really in terms of the knowledge and the resources and the different ways in which colleagues can access the offer in terms of whatever stage they are at their career. So you'll see as we walk through from our senior leaders all the way through to our early career teachers and support staff. There's absolutely places in which you can access an entry points within this offer. So if we just have a look at curriculum as a starting point, important for all of us, I think, within our school communities and that curriculum offer. So first of all, it's really important to say the contributions of Diane in terms of her leading on the module there and sharing her knowledge and expertise. You've got one of the absolute top colleagues that we have in the country in terms of her expertise as a school improvement partner as well. And I always think to be able to to have Diane on tap for your school community and to be able to listen to her thoughts and reflections is really, really powerful. But at the start of every module, we have a making the most of section. And within that making the most of, there's just a quick sort of 2-3 minute video which shares some insights. It's quite a scary thing for me. There's almost two of me there, so I can see some of my colleagues be having nightmares. There's two Alistairs at the same time. But all that does, it talks you through different ways in which you can use the module and materials there. So again, some ideas maybe for a leadership team, how you could use that with early career teachers, for staff meetings, for inset. You'll have your own ideas and you'll use that module in 100 different ways, but there's just an idea as maybe a starter for 10 in terms of the kind of things you would do with that. Thanks, Alan. Need to get my evil twin off screen there. If we go down to the next bit, which is Diane's module, so the main lecture that we have there. And again, you can see you'll have that video there. And with Diane really sharing those illuminations and really prompting you with reflective questions. And again, you can imagine as sitting as a senior leadership team and pausing this at various points and going away and thinking about your own practice and walking through your own curriculum design journey as being a really, really powerful tool there. Thanks, Alan. In addition to that, another thing that you'll see within there is there's an in-conversation piece. And on this particular one, you have Diane and Vijita just talking through all things curriculum. And again, just an absolute gift to be able to listen in on that conversation there and sharing of practice from fantastic colleagues in Diane and Vijita. So thanks, Alan. And again, I think you can see in the ways in which you would use that again. So the opportunity perhaps for some of your middle leaders to listen in on some of those aspects. And in addition to those things, there are reflective questions, there are wider reading. And I think one of the most important things, Alan, on that curriculum one, if we just go back a touch, is some of the case studies that we have. So I saw incredible colleagues, Shona McCann and Roz McFeeters sort of pop up in the list of people on the call today. And for them to share the amazing work that they do in their school communities. I think as leaders, we always want to have that window into other schools to see what other colleagues are doing and how can we maybe sort of magpie some of those amazing ideas and bring them back and how can we shape them within our own settings. So I think that's a really important aspect of the platform. And again, as Alan mentioned, we'll be adding to those all the time. Thanks, Alan. So if we move through into pedagogy, and the module that Vijita was leading there. And again, you'll see a similar feature in terms of that main lecture. And again, I think so important to be able to listen to Vijita talking about pedagogy and the craft of teaching, you know, so valuable for members all across our school communities. And I think we talk at the moment in how do we develop distributed knowledge and expertise of SEND and inclusion. And I won't embarrass Vijita too much, but when I work with Vijita, I think she does that almost better than anyone else I know, again, nationally, in terms of the way she supports her staff and seems to have a conveyor belt almost of brilliant leaders coming through her school there. So to be able to listen in on that and again, use those different elements that we have there with that wider reading, those reflective questions that we have. And also a really nice sort of part of that is we have a transcript of some of those videos. So again, if you think about those coaching conversations and how you can go away and use those, maybe some mentoring, maybe perhaps you're doing as part of the appraisal process, you know, you can see lots of different ways which you could use the variety of those materials on offer. Thanks, Alan. And just as a final example, moving on, I think you're probably getting an idea now in terms of, again, the resources and how you could potentially use those. But if we scroll down to the well-being module, which I think is at the bottom there, and you can just see as you look through there, the caliber of speakers, as Alan mentioned. So I think where else would you be able to find Sharon, Laura, Tina, Janet and Barry all together? I think it would almost be like the best kind of conference that you've ever been to see all those people in the same place. And again, just the wealth of resources that you have within there. They've curated almost a set of wider reading and resources. And again, to be able to access those at any time, to be able to signpost members of your staff team. So there might be some elements of there that you think, yeah, I really want all of my staff team. We know the increased anxieties that we've seen with our students, again, as we've come back from lockdown periods. So there might be elements we think all of our staff need to see those at an entry level. Yet you might have your wellbeing lead in school and you think absolutely dive deeper into some of those elements. So the suggested reading, the signposted resources that you have, and you can absolutely see some of those colleagues perhaps engaging in some inquiry projects themselves, some active research within their role and the things that they do within school there. So just an amazing module there, I think, and I've been really blessed and very fortunate to be able to look through some of those materials, and just absolutely incredible in terms of the resources. And again, if we think about the live events that we have as well, so the opportunity for every module 3 times a year to engage in a live event. I think that's a really important point to make, that we're not just talking something that sits on a screen here and you can go away and you can take it and you can access it, which is brilliant, but the opportunity to form those connections, to come to those live events, to listen to those panel discussions, to connect with other colleagues in those breakout spaces. And again, 3 times a year, there'll be an opportunity for 3 of your colleagues to attend those, and that runs until July 2023. And also on top of that, another layer, I think it's very much a multi-layered kind of platform, as you can see, but also I know Alan and the team are doing some brilliant work in terms of that networking tool, where again, you'll be able to connect with like-minded colleagues from across the country and maybe with similar contexts and cohorts to you, and be able to share practice. So again, that's a super quick walkthrough of the platform there. And again, happy to take any questions at the end of the session, but I'll hand back to Alan. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alistair. So I guess summing up, hopefully you've seen we've put together this genuinely growing bank of resources, but crucially coupled with the power of community. It really is drawing on the wealth and expertise across the whole community to hopefully provide what can be a unique tool for your school, something that you can incorporate into and use to support and enhance CPLD at your setting. Again, hopefully you've seen there's potential there for CPD for all key stakeholders within your setting, not just the leaders and the teaching staff, but support staff and governors. And again, crucially available on demand all year round, 24/7, very much at your convenience. So in terms of the costs for this, we are introducing an introductory launch price. So the cost per school for whole school access to the 2023 programme is £500 per school if the school has an EFL subscription, and £600 per school if the school doesn't have an EFL subscription. So again, it's not essential that a school has EFL. And that cost, just to be clear, that's access to the full platform for a single setting from the date at which the school subscribes it right through to the 31st of July. So potentially a year and a term if you sign up now. We already have over 25 schools already signed up. So the community of schools that are on there is already starting to grow. So I think there's huge potential for this. But as we said, I think that the really interesting thing now is going to be to hear from some of the key people that were really behind the development and design of some of these resources. And I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce Diane first to give her perspective and share some of her insights to the programme and things that she's contributed. Diane.
Okay, thank you, Alan, and thank you, Alistair. I think when we first talked about this, it was very much about how do we centralise, a lot of this thinking, because I think what we've all learnt, it's not just about the things we do, it's what underpins it in terms of the thinking that goes behind it, and how do you reach out to people who are in so many different settings. So we really worked on thinking about how to sort of put something together that will, be defined across any setting, that can reach a real breadth and wide range of people, and that's including all teachers, senior leaders, governors. But also, why are we doing it? Well, we have to be really clear why we did it. And we did it because whilst we talked about key areas of SEND, it was really to build capacity and develop capacity throughout the settings and then throughout the leaders and then, throughout the schools. So building these areas, I focused on one or two areas. Vijita and Barry were focusing on their own areas. But as a group, we sort of really mulled this through. So if you just take the next one, Alan, how we define curriculum, we didn't define it in terms of things. we defined it in terms of changing minds, because unless you change minds, you can't put the things in the right place. So it's very much about not just, you know, showing you what it could look like. It's about how do you contextualize it yourself? What are the people that you're working with to try and draw out some of the, you know, some of the expertise that you have sitting there. So, you know, the thinking is around why are we doing it? Why is it important and valuable, and at the timing of things? So we very much, it was about changing minds. So that's how we sort of approached it from a real thinking point of view. Alan, take the next one. And of course, we can't avoid assessment, and assessment has changed in the last 5-6 years, as we know, and trying to really resonate with what schools feel. And this is what schools feel really now, and did quite a few years ago, that there were barriers in school. And so what we've tried to do through certainly the unit that I was working on, certainly with Vijita, was to try and give you some real live examples of where it works, how to deliver some of these things that take these barriers away. So what you'll get really is you'll get opportunities to start developing thinking, and not just, you know, not just thinking about how we can't get through this because, but actually it's about thinking for the whole school, for every level of leadership. So that's all I'm going to say. I mean, it was a fantastic opportunity to work with a great bunch of people. You know, it was a privilege, and it is an opportunity now to draw on all those areas for everybody else. So thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Diane. Thanks very much. Vijita, would you like to say a few words?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. And at the end of a Wednesday afternoon, so well done for being on this call. My apologies if some students knock on the door. So I'm just speaking about 2 sessions, 2 of the modules. The first one is on leadership at all levels. So going to the next slide. Schools are very dynamic ecosystems, and we know that values and vision-driven organizations can instill creativity across any role. This is so true in schools. And if we think about the pandemic, the problem solving that, you know, all of us did collectively is such a testament to the moral purpose that sits in education. It's really remarkable. Imagine what could happen if we put in a lot of the learning and knowledge that sits in the corporate sector around leadership skills, leadership behaviors, leadership styles, and leadership processes. What this module is designed to do is to grow leadership acumen at any level, because we know that schools can work in quite archaic ways, but what we want to do is make sure that the pressure that we have felt sitting on a senior and middle leadership team, especially throughout this pandemic, is one that actually we can grow and really distribute to any role in the school. If we think about the fact that the pressures that could sit there are really grapples that we're trying to ensure are for the best interest of our pupils. We're all driven by what we want to have the best provision and the best outcomes for our children and young people. Equally, we're very committed to the growth of our staff. We know that they are pivotal in being able to live and breathe the vision, the values, and the core principles that a school and an organization has. I think the beauty of the way the modules are designed is they're structured to ensure that core principles are going to be sitting at the heart of what we're driving for inclusive leadership and compassionate leadership, how we're able to ensure that the modules are going to nurture any colleague, teaching assistant, teacher, middle leaders, senior leaders, colleagues in roles that don't traditionally sit in particular mainstream schools or special schools as well. It's equipping senior and middle leaders to be able to think about strategic priorities as they evolve. I mean, how incredible to have a reference in a school where as something is live and active, I can then dip into a module, dip into a reference to support me as I am trying to establish an action plan, consider next steps, ensure that what I'm doing for school improvement will have an impact. Equally, it's equipping teachers and teaching assistants with the skills that support them as leaders of learning and leaders in partnership with families and multi-agencies, because now more than ever, that relationship is fundamental. How do we support them to know some of those leadership skills that actually are going to be beneficial for them as they move from leaders of learning into potential middle leadership roles? I think that there is something to highlight about this module, which is that it places great emphasis on growing leaders at all levels in a way that allows us to shape the system on our terms. We want to move past what the accountability is driving, instead do what Diane is emphasizing and Barry as well. Ensure that what we're doing is in the viewpoint of what our pupils need, but with the conviction that we need to have around the core principles and philosophies that will drive the development of those characteristics. So that's leadership at all levels. And then the second one I'm speaking about is on the SEND legislation and policy. A really interesting one to share on when we think about the green paper that has also been released. The green paper has confirmed the complexities across the implementation of the special educational needs and disability legislation over time. The fact is the system is very complex and it's difficult to navigate. And it also varies. If you're from a mainstream school or if you're from the specialist sector, we have different experiences. But the reality is that many of our roles will cross sectors. We don't always stay in a particular type of special school or mainstream school because we want those conduits across each of our schools to be able to ensure we're supporting our pupils and our colleagues within our schools to understand their role with a network of schools. What this module is aiming to do is to build capacity through knowledge of the policy and how this features across schools. It gives a lot of those basics, but the basics in a way that help us understand what some of the barriers may be within the policy and legislation, also what some of the levers may be, how we can think about pedagogy and practice through an inclusive lens by understanding the policy at the heart of it. The pressure can often be on an individual, and what we're aiming to do is promote a shared understanding so that any practitioner and any leader is able to develop more of a collaborative ownership on their role with inclusion. If you're in a mainstream school, if you think about the pressure on your SENCO or an inclusion lead, this module alone could be run and every colleague across the school, every member of the leadership team will understand the pressure that role has with the operational and the strategic priorities. Developing this understanding across your teams, I believe will prove quite crucial as we navigate the next steps with the green paper. It will give colleagues across the school a shared voice in the consultation process, but it will give you a very valuable resource as you consider the next steps that you will need to implement as we find out the next steps from the green paper itself. For me, apart from these two sort of summaries I've shared on the two modules, when I think about school budgets, the fact that this resource could be in a school across an academic year for all staff, we know that pupils engage in different ways. We want to be able to put that into place for our staff, place the journey of learning in their hands so that they've got ownership about how they want to engage, whether it's through reflective support, whether it's through the formal modules themselves. What we know is if they're able to access these modules, actually the time that you're investing in supporting them through coaching conversations, through modeling approaches, this is going to be an incredible resource to support you in the role that you're in so that we can all realize these ambitions together. Thank you, Barry and Alistair.
Thank you, Vijita. Thank you. Barry, I'll hand over to you for the final session. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Alistair, and also Diane and Vijita. This has been just such a rich opportunity to work with colleagues who are some great thinkers and to try and put together for you all something that's truly reflective and will aid you in your journey. Alistair's mentioned the one module that I've led on, which is that of mental well-being, pulling particularly on the thinking from the new relationship sex health education curriculum, which became statutory as of last year. And I'm going to weave that in a little bit to the next slide that you're going to see, which is my other module, which is on reflective inquiry. Most of you know, I'm now coming very much to the end of my career, and I've appreciated this opportunity because for me it's about creating some legacy pieces. But I have to tell you, colleagues, that after 45 years in the profession, I don't know all the answers. I don't think we do. I don't think we ever will. And this module is about operating at a variety of levels in your school. That child that arrives in your school and you think, heck, we've never seen a child like this before. Or that curriculum initiative that Diane has suggested to you, that you want to work on together as a team rather than just one person being the sole leader. Or you've got your curriculum in place, but you're not happy with some of the teaching styles. You don't seem to have enough tools in your teaching toolkit, following through what Vijita's just shared with you. And you want to explore, investigate, discover, find out. In fact, build a finding out culture in your school. And that's what this module is about. And I've pulled together work that I've done probably in the last 20 years, particularly with my colleague Joe Edgerton, where I don't talk research with teachers as such anymore, even though my latter days have been as an academic, because whether I use a big R or a little r, teachers run in the other direction. So I talk really about the process of inquiry. And here you've got an inquiry cycle. You'll see the initial words that are coming up are ones that you'll recognise perhaps if you've done action research. But what we've translated that into is, what do we want to know? What's been said previously? So we've gone very much for questions that are very accessible in language. We've had teaching assistants use this approach as well as teachers. So it's about creating and valuing everybody in your school who can make that contribution. And so the modules in this series will take you through this process, and you'll then hear a very powerful case study from Roz McFeeters, where she, particularly with her staff team of late, has been looking at mental well-being, but she talks about the process of inquiry. And one of the joys in the way Roz talks about it, again reflecting Vijita's words around leadership, is she, as the school leader, says to every member of staff in their performance management each year, right, what's your inquiry project for the next year? What do you want to know about the children in your class? So it can be just a within-class piece of work, but systematically and deductively, evidence is gathered, and teaching is an evidence-based profession, but it's gathered by you in your schools for your children, with each other corroborating and validating the reliability of that evidence and the subsequent judgments that you will find. And that's what the previous diagram will have shown you, that it'll be about your practice, about going to the evidence but getting it from the process of inquiry, and then maybe dipping into some of the articles that we've attached to this module that come from research that can inform your thinking, inform your process of inquiry. And on the next slide, it's about, colleagues, releasing your inner detective. Be who you want to be, Miss Marple, Morse, Clouseau, whoever, but inquire for and with the children. Get that lens out and explore. Find the cues and the clues in their learning profile, and then get that evidence systematically. And then, and hopefully collectively, find the trends, the outcomes, and provide new pedagogy for a new generation of children. Because as Vijita's just alluded to, in the green paper, the one phrase that keeps repeating itself is complex needs. And the complexity of need continues to change rapidly and consistently. And therefore, we'll be forever needing new tools in our toolkit to touch that child meaningfully at their point of learning need. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. And thanks again to Vijita and to Diane, and of course to Alistair. So look, that's an introduction. I hope everybody's found that useful and informative. We've got some time. It's racing towards 4:15, which we said was the end point. So obviously, please do feel free to duck off and leave us if you have other things to do. But we're happy to stick around now for as long as there are questions, really. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. What I will do is use this moment just to thank everybody for their time. As Vijita alluded to, it's a midweek Wednesday. It's already been a busy week. The term's already been a busy term. So we're really appreciative of your time this afternoon to be with us. So thank you very, very much indeed. But if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to mute yourself and ask away.
Hello, Alan. It's Andy.
Hello, Andy. How are you?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm good. I'll just switch my video back on.
I've just got a very simplistic question. So the subscription is for 22-23.
Yes.
So what is the renewal point? Is that sort of the academic year? I'm just thinking we'd like, in practical terms, to put staff sort of through the CPD before the academic year starts.
Yeah, good point. Good question. So what we've done, I mean, we had hoped to be launching sooner, but I think everyone would agree last term was a bit of a different experience than we were all expecting. So what we've decided to do is, as that pricing stated, if I just go back a couple of slides, the subscription will include from the point at which you subscribe through to the 31st of July 2023. So at that point, it would be up for renewal. So I'm just trying to find the relevant slide. So we're not, I couldn't tell you what the price would obviously be in July 2023, but certainly it would cover from now right through to that point, if that answers your question. It's probably about as far as I can answer at this stage.
I missed the
nearer the
small
time
print.
We'll be able to, yeah, sorry.
That's all right. No, I missed that small print. And are you also going to be exploring, I mean, we're part of a small MAT, so we're a special school with 3 mainstream primaries. And so will there be sort of a MAT price structure put in place as well?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the first, I mentioned 25, 26 schools already enrolled. One of those groups is a medium-sized MAT. So there are some, we do have MAT pricing. So if anybody is interested in pricing for their multi-academy trust, if you get in touch with me directly, we'll be able to put something together for you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Good to see you again. Good to see everyone again.
Alan?
Yes.
Hello, it's Oliver.
Oliver, how are you?
I'm fine, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good.
Just a quick query. Do the log on for the portal where all of the CPD is kept? Is it an individual log on so you can see any trend analysis about who's accessed what and so on and so forth? I might have missed that bit.
Yeah, no, it is. Each person. No, I think you joined after. Yeah, no, each person. When your school enrolls, there's an onboarding form that you'll fill in just to go through some of the mechanics. Part of that process will be for you to identify which members of staff you want to give access to. Okay. And like I said, that can include support staff. It can also include governors. What we'll then do is generate a unique login for each member of staff. And yes, that will, for that person, there's all kinds of benefits. It reminds them where they're up to. They can carry on from where they've left off. It shows them what they've looked at, what they haven't looked at. And then what we hope to be able to do within that is to be able to provide some kind of analysis and reporting back to the school. Brilliant. Around who's logged in, who hasn't, how many hours they've spent on it, that kind of thing. So some of that stuff is work that we're investigating how best to develop it at the moment. But the plan is that we'd be able to provide at least some bare minimal information back to the school.
Yeah, that would be great.
Usage.
Yeah, that would be great to be able to feed into the analytics of which modules they've been able to go on, so we can put that on their CPDL record. I think that would be of great advantage, really. But no, that's great. It looks great.
Fabulous. No, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, look, I think that's it for the questions. I mean, if anybody else has anything, if they want to just throw up a question now. Hello, Jane. Good to see you. I just see you in the corner there. Hi. Are you in New Zealand or are you in the UK? UK, right.
Sorry,
great
in
stuff.
Australia.
In Australia. Oh, Jane Fincham as well. I didn't see Jane was there too. Hey, Jane. I was looking at Jane Thistlethwaite. Hey, Jane. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Gosh, what time is it with you? It must be like 2 in the morning or something, is it?
It is 1:30 in the morning.
Whoa. Big shout to Jane logging in from Australia. Thanks, Jane. It's really good to have you with us. But Jane Thistle
New Zealand,
well,
sorry.
from New Zealand, yeah.
And I am from New Zealand. Yep,
so it's
New
even
Zealand.
later with you.
Yeah, 3.
3 a.m. Well, any raises on 3 a.m.? Look, that's great. I mean, it shows you that, again, the breadth and depth that we have in the community. We have a growing number of specialist schools now using the app in Australia. And so it's really good to be able to bring everybody together. But look, I think that'll do for today. If anyone else want to stick around and ask questions, feel free to. But look, I'll formally sort of close things off now. So if you would like to head off, please do. And I just would like to thank everybody again for being part of this afternoon. Thanks very much.